It's a critical one and a very high-level one. So I welcome everyone to take a seat so that we can start. Okay, so just to say, we have now concluded all the co-creation part of PIOF 2026. The co-creation sessions have taken place already also this morning. And just to reassure you that all your input and feedbacks have been collected and will be compiled into reports that will be shared after the event. So all the knowledge you have shared won't get lost. And all the efforts we have made will stay with us. So don't worry about that. Okay, so the room is filling up. Just a quick introduction to the Patient Engagement Open Forum for those that are new to it, especially our esteemed guests that are joining this panel. PIOF, the Patient Engagement Open Forum, is an event gathering participants from all over the globe. But now we are going to have a session that looks specifically at the European ecosystem. But this doesn't mean that it's not relevant to others, because we believe there is an opportunity for cross-fertilization and for learning from each other. I'm going to introduce this session now, also to give you a bit the background, where we come from. The work we are going to present on the EPF Barometer on the involvement of patient organizations in health policies at national level started 2 years ago, when the European Patients Forum worked on the manifesto campaign in view of the elections that would take place at the European Parliament. That's where we defined the ideal scenario for patient involvement and patient organizations' involvement on the national level. After that work, we thought it would be time to collect experiences and take stock of the work that is being done on the national level and being able to capture the practices and expertise that is available in the European countries. So this barometer, we have probably seen some copies at the DPF booth. You have a QR code there which you can scan. Looks at mapping the level of patient involvement in the development, implementation, and evaluation of health policies, identify good practices in patient involvement, and lastly, also examine the barriers and challenges that patient organizations face in participating effectively in health policy making. Why we thought of bringing this session to PIOF? Because we thought here we share a lot of practices, but practices alone cannot last for long. We need to reinforce and strengthen practices when they are backed with the policies. And to make policies more systematic, we need to make sure that the patient's and the person's voice is well captured. So we thought we need to go back to the policy to strengthen the practices and vice versa. It's, I would say, a mutual relationship, and we hope that this approach brought to PIOF will further strengthen and reinforce also the narrative that we are building together with the patient communities and other stakeholders that are involved in stakeholder and patient engagement. With this, I'd like to leave the floor to Claudia, the EPF Head of Policy. She will moderate this session, and she will give you a clear picture of who's joining these sessions and what is being done, for what we have done over the last 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Valentina, and thank you to all of you for being here. Thank you to our high-level panelists for being here as well, and our participants. So I will give you a short outline of the session today. We have a lot on our plate, but I think it will be a very interesting session, really looking forward to it. So we will start with a presentation by Jan Heijer, who is really the driving force behind this barometer. I don't think we would be here without him today. He's been really... Yeah, he's been really leading the work from the beginning, the development of the questionnaire, working with the national coalitions up to here, obviously the drafting of the reports and organization of this launch event. So Jan will start with a quick overview of the report, our key findings and our conclusions. Then we will have a short video on the Belgian experience of patient involvement by Frank van den Broek, who is the Deputy Prime Minister of Belgium, and he will talk a little bit about the Belgian experience. Then we will have another presentation by Karina Taminiemi, who is Senior Advisor at the Finnish Federation for Social Affairs and Health on the Finnish best practices in the Finnish case. And then afterwards, we'll have a great panel discussion, and I will already invite our panelists on the floor so that they can join us and also enjoy and react to the presentations if they would like. So I will start by introducing them. So I will start with Minister of State for Mental Health and Government Chief Whip from Ireland, Mary Butler. Please, welcome. Thank you very much for being here. We have also with us today to talk about the Spanish experience, and of course, it's very timely since we're in Sevilla, Javier Padilla Bernaldez, who is Secretary of State for Health at the Ministry of Health in Spain. We also have Marios Charalambides, patient advocate and Commissioner of the Republic of Cyprus, who will talk about his new position and very exciting developments in Cyprus. Welcome. And finally, we will have Pedro Carrascal Rueda, who's the General Director of the Spanish Patient Organizations Platform, POP, and our an EPF member also. So I will give the floor to Jan without further ado for his presentation. Enjoy the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. So on my side, I will present in 5 to 10 minutes an outline of the EPF barometer. So you will find here on your screen the QR code should you want to read it later after this session. And during this 5 to 10 minutes, I will explain what broader context led to the creation of the EPF barometer, go through some geographical patterns, trends, recommendations, and best practices highlighted in the report. So of course, this is just an outline. You will find much more information in the report itself. But I am sure that these first highlights will be able to already feed the discussion between the panelists behind me afterwards and also the interactions with the audience. So perhaps I can start with the broader context that led us to the creation of the EPF barometer. And I think this will also probably resonate with a lot of discussions and sessions that we had over the past few days. So first factor, the international context. So our barometer is pretty much aligned with the objectives of the World Health Assembly resolution on social participation. For example, it also acknowledges the weak institutionalization of civil society and the underfunded nature of its participation in health governance. With this work, we really wanted to bring forward concepts and notions such as participatory governance, democratic health governance, civil society empowerment, and of course also social participation. Second factor, and zooming now more on patient engagement itself, when we started this work, we realized that there were only relatively few tools capable of comprehensively measuring the involvement of patient organizations in national health policies across Europe. So one of the purposes of this barometer was really to bring some more objective metrics and help addressing the lack of transparency around whether and how patient organizations are involved in national health policy making. Third and last factor, although it was not the primary objective, I must say that the barometer also comes at the times when healthcare systems are under increasing resource constraints and patient organizations are also under growing pressure to demonstrate their added value. So to summarize the barometer, I think that Valentina presented already quite extensively the objective of the barometer, so mapping the level of patient organization involvement, identifying the best practices, and also examining the barriers that patient organizations are facing. What I could add is that the report also addresses a variety of topics, all related to patient organization involvement in national health policy, be it, for example, the participation to governmental bodies, regulatory authorities, or health and technology assessment processes. So few key figures, as you can see here on the screen, to better understand what the barometer is. So 27 national coalition of patient organizations contributed their data to this barometer. Some of them are with us today. 23 countries were covered, and over 30 best practices and case studies were co-created with patient organization, and we will come back to this a bit later with Karina. So this brings me now slowly to some of the learnings of the report itself. One of the goals was to reveal some geographical patterns, and as you can see here on your screen and on the map, northern and northwestern European countries are generally performing best. Central and southern Europe display mixed results, and eastern and southeastern European countries are generally lagging behind with, of course, some variations. So, of course, this map should not be interpreted as a definitive assessment of each national system, but more as an indicative snapshot, let's say, to identify best practices and also areas of improvement. It's at least how we conceived it. So basically, we repeated this exercise for each of the different sections. So you can see two other maps here for the sections on institutional frameworks and also financial support. And here the idea was to better understand in which country, which specific policy area is advanced or conversely lagging behind compared to the European calculated average. And this helped us also to map some country-level trends. So these are two examples. These are two radar charts that you can see here on the left of your screen. So now let me go deeper into the content of the report itself and the broader trends. And perhaps I can leave you with three main takeaways. So first takeaway, institutional frameworks governing patient organization involvement are still incomplete. And by institutional frameworks, I mean a formal basis, so it can be a legislation, it can be a policy guideline that specifies how and when patient organizations should be involved in national decision-making. So in terms of key figures we identified for this chapter and this section, for example, we noticed about half of the countries report the existence of a formal framework, but more than 1/3 of the countries we have been in touch with report no framework at all. Another topic that we will mention later during the panel discussion, we also noticed that only 4 countries out of the 23 countries we surveyed have a formal and legal definition of patient organizations. Second takeaway, transparency remains a critical blind spot. And here again, by transparency, I mean the disclosure of processes, criteria, mechanism governing patient organization involvement. So concretely, it can be conflict of interest policies, regular public calls, or transparency registers, among other examples. So here to give you a few interesting figures that we have identified in this chapter and for this takeaway. So we saw that the majority of countries report no clear or transparent criteria in policy and regulatory processes in their country. So, but this transpires also in other policy areas. I just mentioned regulatory matters, but it is also true in a way for HTA processes, where we saw that more than half of the countries report that patient organizations are involved in national HTA processes, but participation remains mostly ad hoc rather than institutionalized. Third and last takeaway that we wanted to share with you, an overwhelming majority of countries identify lack of resources as the main barrier. So for example, most organizations we have been in touch with combine multiple sources of funding, which on one hand supports increased sustainability for these organizations, but on the other hand also requires considerable efforts in terms of fundraising and administration. Zooming perhaps briefly on governmental grants, because I think it's an interesting topic. So governmental grants are the most common source of funding among all the countries we have been in touch with, but they still account for only a small proportion of patient organizations' financial resources. Another barrier I think that is worth mentioning in my view is training. So one of the figures that emerged from the report is that in only 1/3 of the countries, governments give access to patient organizations to government-provided capacity building program, and this is another barrier we have been identifying. So I talked about the geographical patterns, I talked about the broader trends with these 3 takeaways, but an important part of the report is also dedicated to recommendations that reflect the findings of each of the 8 sections. And we also have a strong emphasis on best practices, because we really wanted to strike this balance between trends, figures, graphs on the one hand, and concrete examples of successful patient involvement on the other hand. So you will find some case studies and best practices showing how patient organizations' involvement supports the evaluation of healthcare systems, supports the transition to digital health, to disease-specific advocacy, enhance patient rights, and large prevention campaigns. And this report has also for a conclusion a call to action. So in this call to action, we call to recognize patients' involvement as a democratic principle, to embed patient organizations structurally, to strengthen the role of patient organizations beyond the health sector, and also to provide sustainable support for patient organizations. So I will leave you with this final slide. Today marks the conclusion of a one-year process that has led to the publication of this report, but today also marks the beginning of the next phase for us, the phase of dissemination and advocacy, because the ultimate goal of this report is really to provide patient organizations with both the data and the analytical tools that can support stronger patient involvement at national level and also reinforce their own advocacy efforts in these directions. So over the coming months, we will continue discussing with all stakeholders the findings of the report through meetings, conferences, and webinars. And in the years ahead, we would like to repeat this exercise. So this is the very first edition of the EPF Barometer, and future editions will help us to track the evolution of patient involvement over time and also help us to focus on specific policy areas in greater detail. So as Claudia mentioned it, we will now zoom on national examples, and we will start with a video from Frank van der Broek, Deputy Prime Minister of Belgium. Thank you. It's good.
Patient involvement is crucial. It's also a challenge. It's not easy for a government to oversee the entire landscape and support each patient individually directly. That's why in Belgium we opted for a model in which we work through strong umbrella organizations. In our country, the government indeed subsidizes the patient umbrella organizations, those and the Flemish patient. Thanks to their decentralized provincial branches, there are those to be specific patient associations and groups for specific technologies. This creates a thriving network in which patients can share experience and concepts, whilst the umbrella organizations feed those signals directly into the government. We knowledge was considered just as important as scientific and professional expertise. Because good care is created when we develop policy together with people who listen and understand. Patients also play a central role in and to triggers experiences and concerns on the critical basis for reforms being developed available and triggers. Patients actively participate in decision making within various working groups and in the steering committee of in addition, we're also entrusting specific patient organizations with specific tasks. For example, case managers, appointed through organizations for people with neurodegenerative conditions, support patients and their families to maintain control over their care. Now, I think I would like to mention, as a matter of fact, we define the principle nothing allowed us without us. And here's what I mean. Patients and families are systematically involved in consultations, reforms, and interventions. People with lived experience and participation coaches ensure that voices of patients are heard. We also actively shape policy. Patient participation is not a problem. It is a prerequisite for high-quality, accessible, and consent care. Only by working together with patients can we build a healthcare system that truly meets the needs of people.
We'll now pass on the floor to Karina. Karina, please, from SOSTE.
Good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to contribute to the launch of the EPF Barometer report. Before I begin, a brief note of terminology. Although the Barometer focuses on patient organizations, the Finnish two examples I will share come from the broader ecosystem of patients and public health organizations working together. In Finland, these organizations often collaborate closely, and many of the lessons are relevant across the wider civil society sector. Before I begin, a few words about SOSTE. SOSTE is the national umbrella organization for social and health NGOs in Finland, representing more than 240 member organizations. Our members include patient organizations, public health organizations, and other social and health NGOs that work to improve people's well-being and participation in society. The two examples I will present are quite different. The first comes from public health and prevention. The second comes from policy development. Together, they show how organizations can influence both people's everyday choices and the broader policy environment. The first example is the North Karelia project. In the 1970s, Finland faced a major public health crisis. Cardiovascular mortality rates were among the highest in the world, and many men died prematurely from heart disease. The response was not limited to healthcare services. Instead, Finland launched a broad prevention program focused on smoking reduction, healthier diets, physical activity, and other key risk factors. What made the project remarkable was the way different actors worked together. Patient and public health organizations, including the Finnish Heart Association, the MARTA organization, and local associations, helped translate scientific knowledge into everyday action. Researchers and doctors produced the evidence, but organizations brought that evidence into homes, villages, schools, and workplaces. This broad collaboration became one of the key reasons for the project success. The result was a dramatic reduction in cardiovascular mortality and a public health success story that became known internationally. The lesson is still highly relevant today. Prevention works best when communities themselves are involved in creating change. That is why a renewed North Karelia Project 2.0 was launched last year, continuing the same cross-sector approach to preventing non-communicable diseases. One practical legacy of this work is the heart symbol. It indicates that within its own product category, the product is a healthier choice, for example, in terms of the quality of fat and salt content. The heart symbol is developed by the Finnish Heart Association and the Finnish Diabetes Association, and it helps consumers identify healthier food choices. Today it appears on more than 2,000 products and is recognized by over 90% of Finnish consumers. It may seem like a small intervention, but it demonstrates an important principle. Healthy choices become easier when health promotion is integrated in everyday life. My second example is about changing policy thinking. In 2012, SOSTE, together with its member organizations, introduced the the concept of the well-being economy in Finland. The idea was simple. Well-being is not only an outcome of economic growth, it is also one of its foundations. Investments in health, prevention, education, and social inclusion should be seen as investments in sustainable development. What is particularly interesting is where this idea came from. It did not originate in government. It did not originate in academia. It emerged from civil society organizations and was then developed together with researchers and policymakers. This timeline illustrates how an idea that began in civil society gradually entered national, European, and international policy discussions. So what can we learn from these two Finnish examples? First, patient and public health organizations can drive prevention and improve population health. Second, they build trust and participation by connecting citizens with decision makers. And third, they can generate new ideas that influence how societies understand health, well-being, and development. The Finnish examples are not stories about organizations acting alone. They are stories about organizations acting as trusted partners in wider coalitions for change. When patient and public health organizations are treated as genuine partners, they can help shape both public health policy and population health. The Finnish experience shows that lasting change happens when governments, healthcare systems, and civil society work together. And then here you could see the readings, for instance, all these examples what I have shown you, and also more information from the Barometer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Karina. I think this is a great example, really, of such a concept that everybody knows, the well-being economy, that actually really came from an NGO concept and was really taken up more internationally. So this is really the objective also of our barometer, is to put forward some of those best practices and to show how patient organizations can contribute to policymaking and to better health and to better health outcomes. So we will move now to the panel discussion. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. I'll make sure that we have some time at the end. I was told that we are allowed to run over by 10 minutes since we started a bit late. So we'll make sure that we have some time for that. So if that's okay, I'll change a little bit the order of the questions because it's my privilege as moderator. So I will start first with you, Minister, if that's okay, because so Ireland is not part of our barometer. So I wanted to hear a little bit from you on how you work with patient organizations and health civil society in Ireland, and what are your expectations also from patient organizations?
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invite to be here today. And dear Yves, to all my colleagues from Ireland that have travelled here today, it's fantastic to see you all. It's my firm belief that patient organisations have a valuable role in shaping national policy by continuing to ensure that the patient voice is heard and that the outcomes are focused on an important ones for service users. And I suppose for anyone who knows me and for anyone who doesn't, I've been Minister for Mental Health in Ireland for the past 6 years, a role that I really love. Previously, I was Minister for Older People for 4.5 years. And I suppose a lot of my political career has been working in providing supports for vulnerable people, for people who want to live in their own communities, for people who want to live at home for as long as possible with the correct wraparound supports. And since the day I've taken up that role 6 years ago, my whole focus has been on patient involvement, lived and living experience. And I'm a little bit annoyed by the criteria that you use for defining patient involvement, because I see quite a lot of blank spaces on the map, and that's not the reality. And the reality is that across Ireland and across Europe, lived experience is not simply an input into policy, it's a form of expertise in its own right. So 4 weeks ago, I would have finalised the new Mental Health Act in Ireland, a piece of legislation that took 4 to 5 years to bring to fruition. A person-centred act, a person-centred bill, but coupled with that, it was driven by lived experience the whole way through. And the amount of, I suppose, conversations we had with service users, with people with enduring mental health conditions, was the entire focus. And I suppose I'm a little bit disappointed that the amount of work that's done, not only in Ireland, in other countries in relation to lived experience and patient engagement hasn't been reflected. So I suppose, you know, I suppose the criteria used determined that. But from my perspective, that's disappointing. In Ireland, for example, in relation to mental health, so I believe there is no health without mental health. And I was absolutely delighted to hear the Deputy Prime Minister of Belgium, Frank van der Burg, refer to mental health, because mental health has been absent in the last couple of days in relation to the conference here. And I'm a very, very strong advocate in relation to mental health. And for example, in Ireland, we would have an engagement and recovery office within our health service executive that is run by the most amazing person and a team that all have lived experience. Some people with enduring mental health conditions that have worked very, very closely to make sure that lived and living experience is embedded in policy across Ireland. We also work closely with patient organisations, that we have a lived experience workforce, that we have peer support roles, and we have embedded across all policy. But I'm not here to be negative today. I'm here because I'm always the person who's the glass is half full. And I want to compliment you on the work that you are doing in relation to patient engagement and making sure that patients' voices are heard. I also am of the opinion that there's an awful lot of learnings from listening to people, so listening to lived experience, but most importantly, to listen to living experience. Because, for example, if you're dealing with somebody who might have previously attempted suicide, they're living with that every day of the week. But the more involvement we have with patient organisations, with patient forum, with patient groups, it helps to lessen the stigma in relation to the care journey that they are on.
Thank you. And thank you very much for your perspective also. I'm happy to discuss the criteria. And I think one learning from the Barometer is that it's not all negative, actually. We started from the idea that perhaps it was not as good as we thought in terms of patient involvement, but we do see some best practices and we do see a lot of work done. What we really try to focus on also is how to institutionalize it and how to embed it, to make sure that it's part of the framework. And I think here there's a good link with what's happening in Spain. And Javier, I will pass on the microphone to you. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about the legislation that you're currently putting in place and what it is in a few words, and what drove this effort also.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. I think that, well, now in Spain we are in a situation that in some days, it's going to be during this month, it's going to be approved at the Council of Ministers, the law on patients' organization. And afterwards, it will go to the Congress, and we hope that it will pass, as this is an issue that generates quite a consensus among the different political parties. This has been a law that has been worked together with the main patients' organizations in our country, and I think it's also a very good example of how to define a public regulation. Well, Pedro has been one of the person engaged in this process, so he can also say if I'm right or wrong. And I think that the explanation of why generating this law is on the European Patients Forum Barometer. So we have arrived to a position that we need a concrete regulation in order to take one step forward. We have been moving in health technology assessment regulation. We have been moving in how to involve patients' organization in the instruction of other patients in order to make them capable to engage in the HTA issues and other research and development issues and so. But we really need a concrete regulation that recognizes the role of patients' organization in the national health system, defines their rights and also their obligations, that reflects the right to receive concrete financing to get the sustainability of patients' organizations, and also that gives to the institutions the obligations to promote the role of patients' organizations inside the role of the system. So I think that with this new legislation, we are going to be able to move from taking the patients in the places where decisions are informed to the places where decisions are discussed and are made. And I think that this is one of the main objectives of this legislation. And also, I think that this is done because we are recognizing a singular position of knowledge linked to action that is achieved, that is acquired by the lived experience. So one of the things that has been most discussed about this law has been the definition of patients' organizations, and we have arrived to a definition that is grounded, that is based on the European Medicines Agency organization, that reflects that it's a patient-led organization in the government bodies, that is also reflecting on the decision that are made by this organization. So I think that broadly, these are like the main things that why we are taking this step of regulating very specifically. And I was taking a look to the Barometer, and I was very happy because I know that the next time that you are doing the Barometer, we have been moving Spain from this dark blue to the purple one. So I think this is one way of seeing that we are moving. That is, by the end in the end of the day, moving and advancing is one of the main goals.
It's a date. In 5 years, we'll see the color change. Pedro, if I can turn to you to have your perspective on this development and when it will change concretely for you, this new law and this new definition.
Yeah, that Javier told us that's exactly what happened, but he didn't say that the reason that so many things are happening in patient engagement is that because they are so active in putting in new regulations around all the health system. So suddenly we were reading some text about patient organization, first time in the history of patient organization in Spain. He has told about HTA regulation in Spain, but also the drug future law. So the definition of the patient organization was not covered in those texts. There were also spaces on the governance of those new regulations that were taken by patient organization, so a definition was needed to work on that concept. So this new law that is coming in the next months, hopefully, one of the main goals is to undergo to the definition of what is patient organization. For us, it was clear. One thing is the agenda of the engagement, of the participation of the society in health issues. But another thing is what is patient organization's value and what has been doing the last 50 years in Spain. So for us, a law for patient organization was exactly a law that define exactly what patient organizations are, and Bob, the umbrella patient organization, the director, we know exactly what we are because we are those organizations. So for us was clear, and I think this is in parallel. We have a future parallel agenda of what patient organization can help in the health system and can add to what is doing for the rest of the stakeholders, but also the citizens, the society, the others stakeholders also can be engaged in this. But for us, patient organization should be clearly defined in this new law.
Thank you. No, that's very helpful. So I will now switch to another country who is also doing quite well in the Barometer, I have to say. So Marius, you are the patient commissioner and patient advocate. This is a new role in Cyprus that has just been created. So if you can explain a little bit what your role will be and how this is embedding really patient involvement into the healthcare system in Cyprus.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure for being here. Let me put down some milestones in Cyprus, because we have two strong legislations now. In 2004, we had the first legislation for safeguarding and protecting patient rights. And we had the amendment last year. So that amendment includes important additions. And one of the important additions is the development and creation of an independent authority reporting directly to the Council of Ministers and the President of the Republic, called the Commissioner for Patient Rights, or the Patient Advocate or Ombudsperson of the Republic. with specific duties that complement, of course, the strong role of the federation. We have the Federation of Patient Associations in Cyprus, and we have another law established in 2016 for the federation regarding the consultation with public authorities. So we have managed to institutionalize patient advocacy with my role, and patient consultation and involvement with the Federation of Patient Associations. Regarding my role, there is a huge decentralized mechanism for the protection of patient rights, which involves patient rights officers in every healthcare provider on the island. So the role of these patient rights officers is to provide guidance, assistance, support, receiving and handling individual complaints. And we have the role to manage the whole process, to oversee the policies, the activities of healthcare providers in terms of patient rights. And also, there are district committees, examination committees for these individual complaints. But the role is not just to receive and handle individual complaints. The main role is to collect feedback from these complaints, to group them, to transform data to meaningful information, and to see structural and systemic reforms, healthcare reforms, for the whole system in terms of patient rights. We do exactly the same with collective issues of voluntary patient organizations in Cyprus. So it's a huge system where we collect data, and based on those data, we have a plan, and we have the power to proceed to mediation, to proceed to interventions for various disputes. And of course, we are now one of the strong stakeholders in decision-making processes regarding patient rights. So that's a brief of the new role, and it's of course a historic milestone in Cyprus, and the Federation of Patient Associations was the driver, fighting for more than 10 years for this role, and we are now in a position to develop and establish this new role in Cyprus. Thank you.
Yes, I think it is a great example indeed, not just of institutionalization, but also of putting patients as part of the decision-making process, which is at the end of the day what we look at in this barometer. And I think we have example and best practices on specific disease areas, disease action plans, but having that systemic involvement is perhaps still something where we can make some progress. I don't know if you have, Minister, some comments on that.
Yeah, thank you. And it was great to hear from my colleagues from the Czech Republic, from Spain and from Cyprus. And I actually would have met the Minister for Health in Madrid in March when I was traveling for St. Patrick's Day events. And I also met the Commissioner for Mental Health. And I previously met the Minister for Health in Cyprus when I travel. I haven't made it to the Czech Republic yet, but maybe next year. And I think it's really important to hear from my colleagues what they have said. And I think the piece, I suppose, that maybe we fall down on is the data collection and how important it is to, I suppose, articulate exactly what we're doing. And maybe that's where we need to do a little bit more in Ireland. We are moving to a digitalized system, and it'll probably reflect, more importantly, the work that we're doing. I suppose, as you know, we're moving on very, very shortly. We will be taking over the presidency of the EU, and I'm conscious of the opportunity and the responsibility this will bring. It's only 3 short weeks away where we will be taking on that, and I just want to let all of the people here know that we will have a very strong health agenda when we assume the presidency, and the overarching theme will be investing in health to enable competitiveness. I am fervently of the opinion that health is central to Europe's wider priorities, and population health and well-being will underpin our shared goals. And we're very keen on advancing a more inclusive, person-centred approach. So we will have an ambitious programme with high-level ministerial events, I suppose discussing integrating policy, research, innovation, lived and living experience, which I will drive myself. And we'll focus on prevention, digital health and data, medicines access, which is really, really important across some countries, across the EU, especially in relation to rare diseases, mental health, endometriosis, and the previous speaker mentioned that as well, and the intersection of One Health and climate. But one of the things that I'll be looking for support from all our various countries during the EU presidency is to integrate mental health across all policies. So the mental health policy in Ireland is a whole of government approach, it's a whole of society approach, it's cross-departmental. So if you have a person with an enduring mental health condition, it's not only the Department of Health is responsible, it's the Department of Social Protection, it's the Department of Housing, it's the Department of Justice. And we have embedded that across our policies and have led out on it, because it is really, really important that the siloed nature of a lot of the work we deliver in healthcare can't only be restricted to healthcare. And what I want to do is I want to bring forward a day of celebration, a day of acknowledgement, working with the World Health Organization, that the voices in recovery, the patient forums, and celebrating lived experience would be acknowledged worldwide. So I'm hoping next year at the World Health Assembly in May of 2027 that this will be considered, and that we would integrate lived and living experience. And that's where the patient experience is so important across all our mental health systems worldwide. I think it's really, really important. I think the amount of progress we have made in relation to listening to people, listening to their care journeys, some are good, some are not so good, some are bad. But you have to acknowledge where you get it wrong, and you have to compliment where you get it right. But we have to remember that there's still an awful lot of people across Europe, especially in a time of geopolitical tensions, that can slip between the cracks and that they don't get the healthcare that they need and deserve. Our health policy in Ireland is called Sláinte Care, and it's delivering public health care across the country, the right place at the right time, as close to home as possible. And a huge focus of our healthcare delivery in the last 10 years, I would say, has been in relation to community care. So especially we would have seen, and I'm sure this is the same all over Europe, especially during COVID, we would have seen a huge influx of young people presenting with eating disorders, for example, or disordered eating. And that's very, very difficult. It is one of the most difficult mental health challenges that you have to deal with. But 90% of all eating disorder supports in Ireland are now provided in the community. And when you have the support of your families, of your community, that you can live well in your own community, I think we really have to start turning the dial in relation to that. One of the other things I suppose that we work really well on is the fact that we're an age-friendly country, we're an age-friendly society, and working with social prescribing, social farming, working with men's and women's sheds, active retirement groups. There is so much we can do within our communities to promote positive health and well-being. And for me, every day of the week, the work I do, it's always my own lived experience and the voice of people I hear every day of the week. And I had a really good conversation earlier today in relation to the importance of listening and understanding and trying, if we at a government level, at a policy level, if you don't listen to the people that are living the experience, then you won't affect change. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for your commitment. I really like the point also you make on community care. We see a lot of organizations, patient organizations, are actually providing services. You know, they don't just do advocacy, they also provide services. Some of our members, and unfortunately Edita could not make it today, but Czech Republic is one of those organizations that has tried to put a price and a value, you know, of those services that are being provided by patient organizations and how much the healthcare system saves because patient organizations are taking on this work. And I think it's a great way also of proving the value of patient organizations. And that links me nicely to the money question, because of course, you know, we talk about how great patient involvement is, but it's very often taken for granted and it's very often for free. In that sense, I think one of the evolutions with the law is that it's actually the involvement and the empowerment will actually also come with financial resources. So if you can talk a little bit about that, Javier, and also link it to the discussions at European level at the moment.
Yeah, I think that something very, very common when talking about the regulations is like taking the money issue apart. And I think that it should be talked as a regular thing. And I think that something very important is being coherent between the position that you have at the domestic level and the one that you have at the European Union level. And I think that being coherent at that level is something really important. And for us as Spain, that we have been defending that the operating grants for the non-governmental organizations should be kept under the EU for Health or under the different mechanisms that are done at the European Union level. And we are going to keep on defending that for the ongoing year, but also for once that the multi-year financial framework is already working. So we think that removing the operating grants is not a smart decision, not politically and neither economically. It has not a very big impact on the global European Union budget, but the impact that it has on concrete organizations that are really helping to move this social European Union in comparison to the other fields where the budget is concentrating, I think that is something to be really aware. So it's something that we are that we have been already defending for the whole year. We are also been defending for the new multi-year financial framework. And at the national level, what we are doing is first of all recognizing the right to be financed. First of all, recognizing the definition of the patients' organization, so you can identify the organizations who are going to have the right that you are also recognizing of this financing, and after that, trying to generate the place for a specific funding. We are already thinking about different kind of ideas. One of the ideas, for instance, here in Spain, we have a concrete issue that it's like the pharmaceutical companies are paying. It's a clawback. The pharmaceutical companies are already contributing with a concrete amount of money related to the global volume of drugs they are selling. So this money now is used, for instance, for research and development and for rational use of medicaments educational programs. So we also want to propose that this money is also used to finance the patients' organization. So we think that there is like a triad between the participations of patients, the education of patients' organizations, and the financing, that these three together cannot be working if one of them is not really being addressed. So this is like the framework that we are working on.
Thank you. I think we have great countries here represented, in terms of patient involvement and patient engagement. I'll ask this question to all of you, and then we'll move on to the Q&A. One of the objectives also of the Barometer is to show the differences between countries, and to show that there are countries, obviously, that are very advanced and others where there is room for improvement. So what can drive more convergence at European level, and how can your countries also bring that movement and get other countries to progress? Perhaps, Marius, I'll start with you.
Yes, thank you. I have seen the Barometer, and yes, it's interesting and it's a good question, and I have prepared something on this because it's an interesting issue to see how we can have compatible and connected issues in Europe. So first of all, I think we need to go for standardized frameworks. There is an issue with the patient involvement. How can we define patient involvement? There is a gap, so we need to establish something formal, a Europe-wide definition of patient involvement, and of course to be integrated with the policies and the HTA frameworks. Second thing is the European health data space. So we need to have a dynamic model so patients can easily manage their own health data, while of course facilitating cross-border research and of course participation. And I would say capacity building as well, funding and launching standardized training programs for both patient organizations and healthcare practitioners, with the purpose to ensure that they have the tools and of course the power to engage meaningfully in decisions and policy making. Finally, I would say mandatory involvement mandates. So innovation funding directly to mandatory patient involvement protocols. And in terms of the role of leading countries, yes, they have a role to play. They have to share successful frameworks. They have to share best practices. They have to share knowledge. In April, for example, the Cypriot government was invited by the Greek government in order to present this historic milestone in Cyprus, how we are doing things, what's the role of the federation, what's the role of the commissioner. So we need to share these best practices, we need to share knowledge, we need to establish councils and committees in order to formalize these things, and of course advocating for directives, leading by example, by implementing, of course, progressive national mandates and creating a political momentum for the Europe. Okay, thank you.
Yes, please.
If I could just support what's been said there, and like today we're talking about how the panel discussion is in relation to patient involvement, and a lot of the people who are patients here today, they might be traveling through their care journey. They might be in a good place at the moment, and that's really important to acknowledge. But I do believe that while a person is actually maybe receiving care, that their voice and their choice is heard and listened to, so that there's a care plan in place for them, because that doesn't always happen, especially for those that might have cognitive impairment, who may not have capacity themselves to make their own decision, that decision support services are available to them. And also, I do think one of the things in our new Mental Health Act that was passed by the President 4 weeks ago, that there would be a designated person, this is written into legislation now, that there would be a designated person if the patient requires that. So they still have the voice and choice to determine whether they want a designated person on their care journey. And these are for people who are very ill with a mental disorder, people who may not have capacity for themselves. So I suppose what I'm trying to break it down to into two things. So we have the patient involvement, and in a lot of cases, that's after they have been a patient, but they still have an enduring condition that they're living with and managing very well in their own community as best they can. But we cannot forget the patient that's in a health facility. They might be in a long-term residential care home, they might be in a nursing home, whether they're public, private or voluntary. And I do think it's important to acknowledge all our NGO partners across Europe that deliver services every day of the week that we partner with, whether it's the Alzheimer's Society, or whether it's the like of the Samaritans or Pieta or all the various organisations that we have service level agreements with that deliver healthcare. But I'm really, really conscious of those people that don't have the capacity to make a decision for themselves, and that patients especially think about the future and what decisions they'd like made, that they can make the decision now when they're in full capacity as against waiting until they may not have capacity, especially in relation to dementia, which is such a hidden disease that we're dealing with all across Europe, across the world. And I just think it's really important that you have that conversation with your family, with your loved ones, and determine what pathways you'd like for your own healthcare as a patient as we all age, because we are an aging population, which is great. We're living longer, we're living healthier lives, but we always have to remember that that day will come when you have to make that really difficult decision.
Thank you. Would you also want to comment on the link between patient organizations and the individuals and how we integrate that collective decision-making to the extent we can, but of course recognizing the limitations, as the Minister was saying?
I want to comment on that patient organization. One of the main roles is to connect exactly the individuals and to connect with the policies and to solve those issues, and also to arise those invisible situations that are happening in the lives of the people. So for us it's so important, and I want also to connect with the things that have been said before by my colleagues on what is needed in the future. In the next steps regarding the patient organization engagement and regulation. And what is happening in Spain, for me, one of the most important things is that this is not only a bilateral recognition of the health ministry that say, I recognize patient organization, but when you recognize in a text, in a law, in a clear framework, you are saying this to the rest of the stakeholders, and the legitimacy and giving the space to the patient's representatives is given to the patient organization, but because they are representing the individual voices. So for us in this Spanish future law is very important, this legitimacy aspect, connected also, of course, with the definition of what is a patient organization, led by the patients, by family members, and those involved in the health topics. So these two main things are for us key things in the future Spanish law. And I also want to connect with the money things, and also connect to what is happening in Europe with the lack of framework of funding. And I think it's not only a question of how much money the patient organization can get, but if we are legitimated by this kind of law and is clearly defined, as you say, what is a patient organization, there should be public money to be used for those public things that we are being engaged in. So it's not only that I give money to you because you are great, but if we are running together, if we are working together in HTA, we are working in different new regulations, there should be enough funds, and in the future Spanish law there is also a space to the promotion of patient organization and also the funding, but because we need to protect in the rest of the ecosystem, on the rest of the social agents, patient organization as the key agents also.
Yeah, I would like to add that we have been talking, some of us, about institutionalizing the patient's involvement, but I think that it's also key, at least from the position of the institution, I think that it's important to say, we have to institutionalize patient's involvement, but without capturing. Many times when public institutions institutionalize the patients' organizations' involvement, we tend to try to capture their position. And I think that it's really important for all of us that patients' organizations keep on being an uncomfortable ally. You know, so patients' organizations should be an ally in promoting the development of the health system and on the correct functioning of the health services, but always keeping their autonomy, keeping their independence, and keeping this role on being like the voice of conscience, telling us what's functioning okay, but also what's wrong, and having this independence. So I think it's really, really important, and I think that because of that, it's also really important to have a concrete legislation, a concrete regulation, trying to protect them from the change in the government and on the to protect the dissident opinions.
Thank you very much. And I think that concludes very well this first part of the panel. So I'd like now to open it for questions. So you've heard a lot from our different speakers. So please, the floor is yours. Yes, please.
Hello, Robert Joyce. I'm from Ireland, but living in Spain. And I've been involved with patient advocacy for many years. And I got tremendous benefit from a psychological point of view, from my mental health point of view, of being involved in health research. Incredibly powerful, and I would love many other advocates to have that same possibility. But when I finished my role as an embedded patient researcher, I went on an invalidity pension, and that precluded me from being involved in health research. That has been changed in Ireland, and now we are allowed to be involved in PPI activities, and it boosts not only mental health of the individual, but also a lot of these patients are the biggest users of our health systems, and they understand what the obstacles are. I'm just wondering what the panel thinks about removing these social welfare obstacles that are preventing people who have that lived and living experience of illness from engaging with patient organizations or even engaging with the institutions of government. What does the panel think we can do to start to remove these obstacles so that we have the diversity of voices that we need to have better healthcare and better health policy?
Thank you, Robert, for your question. And we had a long conversation about this already this morning. And I got a real understanding from you of the importance of the patient's involvement, the patient's perspective, and their own lived and living experience in relation to what they can bring to health policy. And just one of the points I wanted to pick up on, my colleague beside me, when you said that we have to embed policies across health that doesn't, if there's a change of government, that a really good policy that's in place previously should not be changed because it mightn't be the narrative that a particular government want. The most important thing we can do is deliver healthcare for people who need it as close to home as possible. I just wanted to touch on that. In relation to Robert, your piece for people who are receiving social protection benefits, and in some instances there are unintended consequences, which means that they cannot contribute to different forums or different conferences or be a voice. I do think we're stronger in Europe when we all work together, and you know, we were able to resolve that issue at home in Ireland in relation to a long-term disability payment. and hopefully we can be a leader in that, and we can start colouring in that map.
Anyone else wants to comment, or what we? You are represented, okay. Yes, please.
My name's Loda, I'm from Belgium, also live partly in France. My question is the following. What is the mechanism in place to get you to collaborate amongst each other? Is it really us having to put you on a stage, or is it only when you escalate things to a presidency, to the European Commission, it goes up and then it comes down? Is there a horizontal mechanism? Because what we found in this community is that connecting the players directly is truly the best way to achieve what you've actually all said, and you just said it, Minister, to work together. But that shouldn't just be political words or a nice video when it's so different from what is on the map. So my question is, what mechanism is there, or could you put in place to have colleagues across these borders really combine forces to help each other, help everyone? Thank you.
I believe it's already in place. I think we work very closely with our partners across Europe. Already this year, I would have travelled to Malta, Spain and Portugal. I travelled to Iceland in November of last year to meet with those that deliver mental health services, in my case, across their countries, and to learn from them, and they also learn from us. I think we are much stronger as a collective, but we have structures in place across the European Union, and we would still have very close, for example, contact with the UK. Like only 2 weeks ago, I was in Northern Ireland speaking at the North-South Ministerial Council, again in relation to mental health, in relation to suicide. When I travelled to Malta earlier this year in March, the Minister for Health in Malta was launching their first ever suicide reduction strategy. And he actually waited until I arrived, and he launched it in English, so that I could be part of it. So I believe there's an awful lot of really good cooperation between the various departments of health across all our countries. I think there's really good cooperation across all countries, not only in health, in relation to, we see the EBSCO meetings that take place regularly across Europe. And we can use something such as the presidency of Europe, like Cyprus. I've never seen so many colleagues of mine travel to Cyprus that they, you know, in the last 6 months. I have another role as well. I'm actually government chief whip, which means that I have to make sure we have the numbers to win votes. And I'm very conscious of all my colleagues that are traveling on a weekly basis to attend conferences and forums such as this. That does really help. Important when you come to these forums that you listen and you learn and you take back the learnings, and you also share good practices, because there's good practices going on in every single country, but they mightn't always be replicated. Last year I had the pleasure and the honor of visiting the Karolinska Institute to learn about ECMO, which was, you know, which supports babies especially at a time when, you know, in relation to saving their lives, in relation to blood transfers. And what you can learn from other countries is so important. I think your point is very, very well made, and I assume my colleagues would agree.
Yeah, well, first of all, at the national level, to promote this horizontal cooperation, what we have been creating is like a kind of forum of patients, for patients' participation, because we know that the different organs that different bodies that we are creating are going to perform and to shape the way patients' organizations are going to cooperate among them. But this concrete question, I would take the question back to you, I think. So, what can patients' organizations do to promote the horizontal cooperations in terms to achieve a growing degree of political incidence? Because patients participation in health policies is not a gift given by the institution, it's the reflect on the generation of capability for patients' organizations to have an actual incidence on the design of the policies. It's also true that it's really helpful that people in institutions have the democratic conviction that patients' organization is a democratic value, but it's the consequence of this generated power of the joint cooperation between patients' organizations. So this is something that this question can be done to the European Patients Forum. For instance, I'm not going to give the ball to Claudia, but I think that this is something that it's not up to down, it's bottom up, really.
Can I make a comment on that? I think we had a very good experience in connecting what is the national reality and the relation between the patient organization in Spain with the ministry, with the expertise we have taken from EPF, for example, gathering the similar opinions between patient organizations around Europe. So sometimes when we are facing a new challenge on a new topic, we learn from others at the patient organization in the European field, and also we are connected with the ministry telling what are you thinking about this or how we can connect that. So sometimes we go to a joint point before things are coming from Europe to the national, and we are also able to say the government, to say the ministry, what are the patient voice, not only through EPF at European level, but with this experience we can launch and we can send the voice also at national level. This combination for us in Spain has been really important to learn and to influence at the European and the national level. So I think if we are able to connect our capacity at European level with the relation with the national ministries, I think is very important.
I may add that at the national level in Cyprus, we have managed to move from a consultative decision-making model to a participative model. What's the difference? In the consultative way, they listen to the voice of the patients and they control the whole decision-making process. In the participative model, we are sitting together from the initial stage as equal partners. Yes, of course, it's about trust and quality of feedback. And we are sitting together and we find the solution to the end. So, and this is, of course, a key message for the next day, to embed this in the culture, to change the mentality apart from any legislation, apart from any other mechanisms and procedures. So to gain trust and to go for a full participative model from the beginning, from the drafting of any legislation, from the initial stage of every process, in terms of research, to involve patients from the trials in the beginning, to take into account their experience. So it's about, trust, mentality, and culture as well. So move from care to patients to care with patients. It's a huge difference.
Thank you. We have time for one last question. Otherwise, I'll take my privilege to answer Javier's point on advocacy. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Federico. I'm here with Ellery. We're from ICANN. I'm 23 years old and she's 17 years old. So my question is more directed to, well, for context, this is our first conference our first POF conference. It's really great to be here. We've learned a lot. And one thing that we also learned was that there seems to be this growing demand for youth to have a greater role. And so, yeah, my question really was, what are you doing so that a younger demographic is attracted to what you do? And I heard you say bottom-up approaches are really important. So of course the youth has to be as involved as possible for that to happen. So yeah, what are you doing in that regard? Thank you.
Pedro, perhaps do you want to start about how patient organizations integrate youth within the frameworks, and then we can pass on to the rest?
Yeah, is key, and I can also put here the voice of EPF and the youth movement, and it's also an important. They have a very important role. They have a specific place at the board, and all the things that the youth is working in projects like STIP and others. I think this is the future with the how patient organization can connect with the society and can learn to create the future patient organization. So I think this should be a structure, and EPF in this sense is an example to national organization, and is pushing with these examples, for example, how we can create these kind of projects or programs, etc. So of course, it's part of the things we have to do.
I wanted to add, some months ago, the Patients Organization Platform, which Pedro is representing, was organizing a joint meeting together with me, the Secretary of State for Health, and together with the Secretary of State for Infants and Youth, together with patients' organizations of young people, kids and young people, to take their demands directly to the political institutions regarding to the singularities of young population. And in addition, we have in the ministry a mental health commissioner who is in very close cooperation with the Youth Council in Spain, which is like the legitimated organ for the young people's participation at the political level. And they are like in close cooperation in terms of getting their singularities and their demands just directly to the institution, and very especially in a field like it is the one of mental health. And in addition, here in Spain, it's under it's in some drafts, and it's under all the legislative pathway, the youth law. And one of the issues that they are going to consider very specifically is related to the health issues of the young population, and it's been because of the influence of the Ministry of Health, together with this meeting that I am talking to you about, organized by the Patients Organizations platform.
Thank you very much for your question, and thank you to you both for attending. It's great to see young people attending conferences, and I hope you're enjoying it. I'm a mother myself. My youngest is 20, and I'm just really impressed that you're here. I'm not sure would my 20-year-old be at a conference. The point I want to make to you is in relation to healthcare, it's across the whole life cycle. It's from the cradle to the grave, and all voices must be heard, and they must be respected, and they must be listened to. And from my perspective as Minister for Mental Health, you know, I always engage with the various youth organisations to listen to them and hear from them, and they're more in tune with what's happening in society than I might be. Because it's really, you know, life can be tough at the moment. We're in an age where you have huge pressures on young people, especially in relation to social media. It's a huge driver of mental health challenges and illnesses. We're overwhelmed with misinformation and disinformation. And it's really, really important that we hear the voices of young people starting out in life, young people heading to college. Can be a really, really difficult time for them, moving away from home for the first time, and, you know, not being used to having the arms of their family wrapped around them. And I do think it's great that you're here, and keep coming to conferences and keep having your voices be heard, and don't be afraid to reach out to policy makers, to decision makers, to local organisations. So in Ireland, we have a youth organisation called Feroiga. I don't know what it's called in where you live, but these youth organisations get the opportunity to come to our parliament twice a year, to sit in our parliament and to have their voices heard. And last year they came to the parliament in Ireland, and they wanted to discuss two things. They wanted to discuss examination stress, and they wanted to discuss access to appropriate mental health counselling, especially for the LGBT community. So keep doing what you're doing, and I'm thrilled that you're here. Thank you.
And just to note that EPF and our youth group will be co-hosting a conference, a youth congress towards the end of the year, where we'll explore some of these questions. And perhaps at some point we can also consider a barometer on young people engagement in policy and in healthcare more generally. I think could be very interesting. So we're reaching the end, I think, of our panel. I will just give you perhaps in one sentence to close, if you can highlight one priority to strengthen patient involvement in the next 5 years. So in view of our future barometer, what is one priority for you to further patient engagement and with what you do and at EU level as well?
Can I start? Yeah. So we have very clear opportunity now on the table. Javier told us that in this second part of the year, this draft law is trying to become a law. So for us, to have a future patient organization law in Spain should be the most challenging and demanding question.
I would say collaborative care partnerships through shared decision making for the next day, and also lived experience research is very important. There are gaps, and we need to invest. We need to invest on this. Thank you.
I'm going to say the same priority as Pedro, so the approval of the Spanish law on patients' organization. I think that when the institutions and the patients' organizations have the same priority is good news.
And I don't disagree with any of my colleagues, but where my focus is going to be is I want to work closely with everybody in this room, that patient involvement, that their voices and their choices are heard loud and clear, that we work together to make sure that lived and living experience, I've said it 100 times already today, but lived experience is embedded in healthcare across the world, and that we all work together so that next year we might have an international lived experience day, that we can all look to our experience and we can all share our best values and our goals. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we can thank you very much to our panelists. Thank you very much for the great discussion. And please read the barometer, send us your feedback, and happy to continue the discussion. Thank you. That's good. Okay, good. Congratulations. Thanks. Yeah,